Thank you for the introduction, Seth. I'm on page 87, if anyone wants to follow along. The setting is Norfolk, Virginia, on a very hot August night at about 3 a.m. The time frame is in the 1980s. And our two characters here are Lieutenant Deborah Slater, who's a brand new physician, and Matthew Jenkins, who is a seasoned Navy corpsman. They've just been out on an ambulance run on Deborah's first night on call. I jumped rusty along its edges.
Lynn, I muted you. Can you start over? Just for a sec.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. I jumped down from the ambulance and looked around. The base police's van, haze gray and a little rusty around the edges, was parked at the back of the lot. On my left, a World War II era guard shack stood empty, and the double gate separating the shack from a neglected stretch of road on the far side of the fence didn't appear to have been opened in recent memory. Pines choked with Virginia creeper hemmed the other three sides of the lot. The white lines had chipped with weather and time, and dandelions poked through the cracks in the asphalt. In the middle of the lot, two policemen stood with their backs to us, smoking and looking at something on the ground. I grabbed the jump box and jogged over to where they stood. The younger of the two guards acknowledged us with a nod. "Just like we found him, Doc." He took a big draw on his cigarette, held it a moment, and exhaled through his nose. I knelt on the ground next to the corpse. He was past middle age, smallish, but with a look of someone used to physical labor. He lay on his back with his knees drawn up in a stiff fetal position. His dull, half-open eyes had receded in their sockets, and in his gaping mouth, a set of top dentures still stuck to his palate. He was dressed in snag double knit brown slacks and a faded short-sleeved plaid shirt. A wedding band seemed trapped on a thin finger by knobby knuckles. His feet were bare, swollen and discolored in a way that hinted at chronic heart disease. I sat back on my heels for a moment, deciding what to do with him. Sensing that the three men watching expected something of me, I pulled a stethoscope from my coat pocket and, feeling vaguely foolish, bent my cheek to the man's face, feeling for breathing. I put the stethoscope on his chest and listened in vain for heart sounds. In spite of the heat, his pale skin felt unpleasantly clammy and cool. I shoved the stethoscope back into my pocket and stood up. Odd position for him to be in, curled up like this, don't you think? I walked all the way around him once and then bent down and pressed lightly against his bent knees. They didn't budge. I turned my head sideways and looked again. Maybe he was lying on his side when he died. Jenkins shook his head and shrugged. "Couldn't tell you." I stood up. "Well, let's get the poor guy up off the ground at least." I watched as Jenkins opened the back of the ambulance. He reappeared a minute later, pushing a gurney that he rolled up next to the body. He motioned to the nearest cop, who ground out a cigarette with his shoe and ambled over. The two of them hoisted the corpse onto the gurney and laid him on his side, facing away from them. I pulled up his shirt and inspected his back. No blood, no sign of trauma, just the livid marks that blood makes when it's settled after death. His unwashed trousers were faintly damp and smelled of urine. Something about that smell made him seem sadly human. I looked down at him for a minute more, feeling helpless and sorry as Jenkins pulled a sheet over him. I turned and paced slowly towards the honeysuckle-wrapped fence. Through the vines, the main runway of the Breezy Point Air Station stretched away from me at a diagonal. I could hear a prop plane idling in the distance. Nearby among the pines, a nightjar called, "Chuck Will's widow." Another one, farther away, replied, "Chuck Will's widow." My Southern grandmother used to say that nightjars call like that when they sense a soul departing. The superstition made me shiver in spite of the heat. I fanned it away with the open edges of my lab coat. After a moment, I straightened my scrub top, retied the baggy pants, and walked back to the others.